it was towards the end of his set and the Dead were going to start, and it got considerably louder and rowdier when the Dead were playing, and so she was taking me backstage to this zone where all the kids would hang. And I started pitching a crazy hissy fit, just like wailing and screaming. And she asked me, "Sammy, what's wrong?" And I went, "I want to go back and hear that jazz."
The kid that wanted to hear that jazz music is Sam Grisman, bass player currently working with the Sam Grisman Project, and son of the immensely influential David Grisman. Sam's upbringing alongside his dad and his exposure to other musicians within the realm allowed him to form ideals about music starting from a very young age.
My dad would often have friends in town for a session, for a recording session, which sometimes, depending on the project, might last a week. So, Doc Watson might be around for a week or two, or, Ralph Stanley for a couple of days, or the Del McCurry band might be hanging for a few days. Or I remember when I was in middle school, Beppe Gambetta and Carlo Eonso came over from Italy, and they stayed at the house and like cooked for us. And, every day we're recording. And that was pretty special because they're just like these beautiful Italian folks, and Beppe brought his wife Federica, and I'd just never been around Italian people before. And he went to the grocery store and bought like, had never tasted capers. And he just like bought all this great food and cooked it for us, and sort of opened my eyes to a lot of, different cultural possibilities. Yeah, and Sam Bush came and recorded a record for a week and a half or something like that. I remember playing catch in the backyard with Sam. I remember he, had his own mitt. So that's the kind of dude Sam Bush was, is he knew that, I was in Little League, and he must have been talking to my dad before the session, and he, brought his mitt to play catch with me, which is pretty special. Yeah, and when I was 8 or 9, John Hartford and Mike Seeger came to town to make that Retrogress album. And I just remember really like I just loved the sound of John's voice. I thought he was the coolest guy ever. And one time my dad and him were talking about Dick Tracy comics, and yeah, he drew a whole strip of Dick Tracy comics like from memory for my dad. And he like signed his name in calligraphy backwards and forwards at the same time. He could just do unbelievable shit. And so I thought he was kind of like a wizard. And I really wanted to make some music with him and Mike and my dad. And I remember this one night, my dad told me I could pick some tunes with them, or at least play a tune with them. And my mom, it was my bedtime, so she started putting me to bed, and I threw a huge tantrum. And she asked me what what the problem was, and I said, "Well, he said I could, play some tunes with those guys." So I went downstairs, and they were recording this tune, Memphis, and I kind of pled my case to my dad, and he said, "Well, I'll tell you what, if you can, there's only one chord change in this song. So if you can figure out where the chord change is, on this take, you can stand in the control room with Dave Dennison and, play along. But if you figure out where the chord change is on the next take, you can come record it with us. So he didn't set up a mic for me or anything. I just stood in my dad's booth and played along with him. But that ended up being the first time I, recorded. Growing up in a house with a musical father, and my mom's a piano player as well, with a recording studio in the basement, and just a rotating cast of my dad's friends coming to work on music and record music. I just kind of felt like everybody was born with some sort of like musical voice, you know, like everybody gravitated towards an instrument. That's at least how I conceived of it. So you're born like a bass player or a mandolin player or a guitar player or a fiddle player. And it took some time like plunking around on other people's instruments that were laying around the house, or, banjos, mandolins, guitars that were lying around, that were my dad's to sort of realize, oh shit, there's a lot of practice involved here. And, nobody's just born with the ability to articulate their thoughts on an instrument.
The instrument that spoke to him was the bass.
I just always love the sound of the instrument and the sonic space that it fills. And, I originally fell in love with the sound, and probably because there were a lot of great bass players in my life, like Jim Kerwin and Todd Phillips and Edgar Meyer. And ultimately, I just fell in love with the role of the bass in a band. It's like a supportive role, but you also have a lot of control over the rhythmic emphasis, the time feel of a band. And it's just a crucial component, to the rhythm section and the groove.
Although, there are more things on the mind of a kid than just the role of the bass in a group.
When you're 3 or 4 years old and you're learning, bass seemed pretty simple to me because, when all these other cats would have to learn how to spell a chord, like a G chord or something, or, G chord on a mandolin or a G chord on a guitar, I would just have to hit an open G string.
Also, in the typical fashion of a kid, Sam had a dream job, but it wasn't to follow in the footsteps of his father.
When I was growing up, my best friend, Henry Moser, uh, we'd known each other since we were about 2 years old, and our dads were friends, and we both lived in Mill Valley, and like he had the nicer house and the nicer car, and I just wanted to be Mike Moser when I grew up, to be honest. I wanted to be just like Henry's dad, and Henry wanted to be like my dad.
It wasn't until later that Sam realized he had a different path in life.
I got serious about playing music when I was about middle school aged, and I started to meet other kids my age or even a little younger sometimes who are as serious or more serious about music, especially practicing and improvising. We used to go to this camp called Bluegrass at the Beach in Nehalem Bay, Oregon. I don't think it exists anymore, but that was a formative experience for me going there and taking some bass workshops from Todd Phillips and being encouraged by a class full of people who are older than me, who are playing larger instruments than I was, because I at the time was playing like a quarter size or a half size bass. I still wasn't sure that I was going to do it professionally, even though I started working with my dad when I was pretty young, like later in middle school. And all throughout high school, I was like missing school to tour with him in his bluegrass band. And so I didn't really conceive of the fact that I was already kind of a professional musician. I still kind of wanted to be like Mike Moser because he had, a dope BMW, and he, he was the creative guy in an advertising firm, and he was a partner in the firm. So he was like a rare combination of like respected and well compensated, but also had this creative reign over his domain, which is something that, my dad also has. My mom was dating this guy when I was like a freshman or sophomore in high school, and he took us on a vacation to Hawaii, and we sat next to a guy on the plane who was just a really nice, like friendly character. And he happened to be in advertising, and he asked me what I wanted to do when I grew up. And I told him that I wanted to be in advertising, and he basically said, like, get out now. Like, this is the most soulless field, man. Like, you don't want to be in advertising. What are you talking about? So then I realized, oh shit, you can't just be Mike Moser. Moser is a genius creative mind who, worked his way to be a respected part of this community. And then I didn't even understand it, but he signed a non-compete clause like in the late 90s. He just didn't work. Of course I wanted to be like Mike Moser. He just got paid to not compete against his former partners. He just lived in a baller house in Mill Valley and had a nice car and did whatever the fuck he wanted. So that, that's the only reason I thought for a moment I wasn't going to be a musician, you know. And then I, got into high school and started, realizing that nothing was going to make me happier than playing music with my friends. And so, what good is money if you're not going to be happy? Sort of resigned myself to being a broke bass player from there on out.
My brother and I did not grow up with musicians for parents. So much so that my brother once told my mom that she had no musical talent while trying to teach her to play the violin. But our parents still exposed us to the bluegrass community at a very young age. They always gave us access to instruments and they kept music playing pretty much at any appropriate time that you can imagine. The most impactful thing me and my brother both remember are the festivals. I called him to talk about this.
Being taken to like Ospey Valley Bluegrass Festival as like small child, like being like not even like a real person, like definitely kind of put me into that scene where like honestly too being that young, going to the Bluegrass Festival had nothing to do with the music. It was just to kind of like go camping and like have a good time, ride my bike around and like being like a part of that like overall inviting community that bluegrass is.
As we grew up, we stopped being the kids that were just there to play. We both had what we like to call musical awakening moments.
I never knew what band it was. There was like some band that were all wearing suits, like very traditional style bluegrass, and the banjo player was playing really fast. And then they had like this like it was like probably like a stage gimmick where they were like, oh, we're gonna turn them to 100x now, and they're like two times speed or something like that. And like they had like a little like thing, and it like looked like they like pushed like this little lever. At least in my head, it looked like that. And then the banjo player started playing faster, and like I remember, like that's another like moment where I was like, whoa, like this bluegrass music is kind of cool, and like wanting to play the banjo.
We both had numerous of these at Gray Fox, a festival very dear to us. The other day, I was like watching YouTube at home and we saw the the video from Gray Fox of Billy Strings with Della Mae, and I was talking about how that was like one of my musical awakening moments. And then we found Grateful Ball with Jeff Austin, and it was like a specific song that was like, so I want you to talk about that, your musical awakening moment.
Okay, that whole show was just amazing, and then probably like my the musical awakening song that I had during that was the song Loose Lucy. I just remember I want to say thank you for a real good time.
While I just play for fun, my brother currently studies music education at the University of New Hampshire. So I asked how he ended up deciding on this.
Well, I always just enjoyed music, and then I kind of felt like I don't know, like definitely going to like all those bluegrass festivals and everything like that, and just having such a large part of my life based around music that like I kind of wanted to continue with it some way somehow. As I went through high school, I was like, oh, like I just really want to play my guitar every day and like share the joy of that I like have with music with other people.
Sam, my brother, and I all had a deep exposure to the bluegrass community from a very young age. This exposure helped foster our current love with the music community. A great example that shows the power that the community can have is just the simple applause at the end of a song. Here's Sam performing When First Unto This Country at the Waldo Theater in Maine.
Well, they beat me and they banged me, fed me on dry beans, till I wished unto my own soul I'd never been a thief. My hands stuck in my pockets, my cap set on so bold, my coat of many colors like Joseph's of old. When first unto this country, stranger I came, I called closer.